Welcome everyone to the introduction to the Enneagram. What is it and why is it helpful for our spiritual lives? Why is it important for our emotional lives? You know, I've often said that our spiritual lives and our emotional lives are intertwined and one affects the other. And the Enneagram, Enne meaning 9 for Greek, is a wonderful tool that can help us recognize our patterns of behavior. Particularly helpful is recognizing the patterns of behavior that trip us up. Now, you'll already have a good idea what trips you up in your life. For example, if you have a quick temper, that's probably caused you some suffering, right? The Enneagram definitely addresses this kind of thing. Or if you're maybe a little bit fearful and a little bit anxious and you don't step ahead the way that you would like to in life and make decisions, with ease or not so apprehensive, the Enneagram helps us to recognize these patterns in our lives that trip us up, that cause us a lot of suffering. The old word is passion, meaning suffering. They identify the passions very clearly. Remember, St. Paul said, I do what I don't want to do, and what I do, I've got this war inside me, Paul said. I don't always do what I want to do. Well, the Enneagram helps us step back and observe. And really what it does is that it's great for showing us our motives, why we do what we do. There are 9 patterns, there are 9 types. I'm very briefly going to go through all the 9 types. You might see yourself in several types. It can take a while to figure out, which type you are, because there's a little bit of all 9 in each of us. But I want to just very briefly, this is an ancient tool, goes way, way back to the Desert Fathers. And I'll just briefly go through these 9 types, and I think that you'll recognize, if not yourself, you'll recognize someone you know in these types. So let's start with point 1, or the type 1, the perfectionist. As you can tell by the name, perfectionists want to do things well. They want to be good people. They want to do their best. If you want a job well done, give it to a type 1. They're going to do their best. They're ethical, they are reliable, they're self-disciplined people. They have a high standard. Not only do they have a high standard for themselves, but they also have a high standard for others, which can cause some frustration and resentment when others don't, when others are lax. Where others don't live up to the standard that they believe that is the right way to do something. So there's the pitfall for the one. You can see that could cause some trouble there when you look around and you see all is not well in the world. That could get you pretty resentful and pretty angry. That would be the passion or the suffering of the type. Another way to know if you're a type 1 is that type 1s have a very loud inner critic, a voice of correction, that no matter what you do, and you've had this from an early age if you're a type 1, you'll have a voice correcting you and telling you, you could have done that better. There could have been some improvement there. And it's pretty relentless. And that would be your clue that you would be a type 1. Now, all of these types, we'll go through all 9, they all have points of growth. But for this talk, since this is a short talk, what I'm going to do in this talk is I'm going to describe a little bit about the type and a little bit about how we suffer, or the passion, why it can cause us trouble. I'm just going to concentrate on these 2 things. Second type is called the giver, or the helper. And type 2, beautiful, such a nice thing to be in a type 2's presence. Nurturing, warm, attentive people. They They make you feel comfortable at home. They make you feel loved. They are friendly people. They love to give. If type 1 wants to be good, type 2 wants to be loved. And the reason we do everything is because we're looking for love and belonging and our place in this world, right? This is why we all do what we do. And the type 2 believes, whether consciously or unconsciously, and I think most of these things are all unconscious, the type 2 believes that if they can meet your need, they will be loved. Which is of course fine to a point, but what can happen is that the helper can be so good at helping other people that they forget to look after themselves. They can become exhausted, they can become burnt out, they can become tired. And you can see that there's a downfall there, and there's a lot of suffering there. Because unless that type 2 is really good at boundaries, they're going to be depleted by all the needs around them. So many needs. So yeah, for every type, there's this good side, and then there's this negative side. So the chances are, if you are a high giver, and you give to a lot of people, and you find yourself getting weary and tired, there's a possibility you might be a type 1. The type 3 are the performer, the achiever. Type 3s, if 1s want to be good and 2s want to be loved, 3s want success. Now you think, why would you want success? Well, because whether consciously or unconsciously, the 3 believes that in order to be loved, they got to be good and successful. Good as in successful. Good as in achieving. They have to do something, and they have to do it well. And that gives them a sense of worth and being worthwhile. Now, does God say this? No. Does God say we have to achieve and we have to produce and we have to be efficient, which is another quality of the 3? Do we need all this in order to be loved? No. But somewhere along the line, the 3s pick this up, this message up. They tend to be positive, optimistic, efficient. They're practical. Now, if that gets out of balance in any way for a 3, this efficiency can be great up to a point. There's a lot of things that aren't efficient. There's a lot of people in the world that aren't efficient, which can cause a lot of impatience. And you can see that impatience would be the downfall. That would be the pitfall, wouldn't it? When you start to get irritated and annoyed at everyone around you because they're not doing it as quickly and as efficiently as you would like it done. So 3s, yeah, can get very impatient with a lack of efficiency. Too busy trying to do things too well, too busy looking good and being successful, and not paying attention to things that are actually a lot more important in this life, because we know in our heart of hearts that we're not loved by what we do, right? That's the whole message of grace there. So type 4, the romantic, sometimes called the artist. 4s, what is important for 4? Significance, meaning, depth. They're warm. They have a full range of emotions. Creative, expressive, gentle, playful, funny people. Often sensitive. Concerned about the beauty in this world. A 4 is much more able to enter a deep and meaningful conversation, because that's what they're looking for. They want depth and meaning. The passion, the suffering is often envy, because when you look out onto the world, and we all have all of this in us. When you look out onto other people and other situations, there's always someone with there's always someone with something that you want. So when you look out, if you admire creativity, there's always somebody with more creativity. If you admire beauty, there's always someone with more beauty in their lives. Whatever you value, there's always someone with that little bit more, and that can cause a longing, which is a suffering. So if if you find yourself with that, and you've had that your whole life, that sort of looking at, comparing and longing, which leads to a bit of dissatisfaction in your life, you could be a 4. You could be a 4. Especially if your sadness is familiar to you, melancholy. You can stay in these emotions for a long time before you pull out. That would be the suffering or the passion, the pitfall. Of course, the upside is that often highly creative people who can be with others in pain too, by the way, type 4, maybe more than anyone else has a capacity to be with others during suffering. Type 5, the observer, intense, cerebral, perceptive. Type 5, they have a need to be competent, and they often are very, very competent within their area of study or their area of interest. They're self-sufficient, kind, perceptive people. They guard against intrusion. They're often private. They're often private people, in the sense that they need space, their own space to think, to process. Sometimes the world can be a little bit too much for a 5. People can be a little bit too much, a little bit too intrusive, so they have to withdraw, back away a bit. They have quick minds, they're objective, they can be quite unorthodox, as can the 4. Certainly creative, but this privacy, and this withdrawing, and also they have almost like a greed for knowledge in their area of interest. That can be the greed area. That can be a problem. Anything can be, right, as it's taken to extremes. And the privacy, this withdrawing. You withdraw too much, and you can become quite isolated, can't you? And people really don't know you. So you can see how that could get out of balance, and that could be a downward spiral where you get really kind of locked into your own world and your own inner world, and you can start to withdraw from others rather than give to others. So yes, that holding on to knowledge and that withdrawal, that can be a problem. So yeah, if you find yourself pretty intense, pretty in your head, maybe a rich inner world, like the 4 would have a rich inner world, you could be a 5. Could be a 5. Number 6, the loyalists. The loyal skeptic. Oh yeah, the loyal skeptic. They want security, don't we all? But they really want it. That's their number 1 thing. They look around the world, they see that this world is not a particularly safe place to be. And so they try and make their world safe. And the way you do that is the way we all do it in a way, is we look ahead and we see what could go wrong, sometimes called worst case scenario, but we see what could go wrong, and we try and make sure that thing doesn't happen. Now, with the loyal skeptic, that can obviously lead, as it does all of us, can lead to a bit of anxiety. That would be the suffering, the passion. That can lead to a bit of fear and anxiety, because you're looking out for what can go wrong. Can I trust this person? Can I trust myself? Sometimes 60s have trouble with themselves. They're likable, they're caring, they're warm people, they're helpful people. They're often loyal to the group and keep the group together. You can count on them to keep the group together. But that suffering, that passion of fear and anxiety, yes, that can sometimes get exaggerated. And when it's exaggerated, And when it's full force and when it's driving, you know, and that personality trait is driving the whole, our whole self, you can see that's not going to lead. When we're led by fear, that's not going to lead to good places. So yeah, courage is needed there. So yeah, you may be a 6 if you find yourself a little bit apprehensive, some trust issues with yourself, making own decisions, look to others, tend to look to others in authority to make sure everything's okay, looking ahead. Worst case scenario, you could be a 6. Number 7, the epicure, the adventurer. 7s want to have their needs filled. They want to avoid suffering, and the way they're going to avoid suffering is by having a good time. The way they're going to avoid suffering, the suffering of this world, because there's so much suffering in the world, is they're going to have fun. And they do fun very, very well. They love options, they love planning, they love multiple activities. They're fun-loving, imaginative, energetic, quick, confident people. And if you're around a 7, you won't have time to be bored, because they're usually extremely energetic people. They can get a lot done, and they can pack a lot of events into a day or even a vacation. You go on vacation with a 1, you'll come home exhausted. So yes, the suffering or the pitfall or the temptation is, of course, trying to avoid this pain at all costs. You can't, right? Not really. If you want to be present and aware in this world, you can't really avoid pain, can you? It's a part of life, right? Pain is a part of life. So yeah, and a mature 7 is going to be able to sit with their own pain, and they're going to be able to sit with others' pain. They're not going to be in that constant state of avoiding and always packing fun into life. They're going to be a lot more balanced. That would be the growth point for the type 7. Type 8, the protector, sometimes called the boss or the asserter. Now, the energy for the type 8 is, the type 8, first of all, they don't want to be controlled, and they want to be in control of their own life. They're direct people. They say it like it is. They are loyal, they get a lot done, they're confident, they're energetic. If you're in a group with an 8, you will know what the 8 thinks. They'll tell you. You don't have to wonder. If they're angry, you'll know it. They'll show it. Not everyone does. They're strong. They're often in leadership positions. They can, at their worst, they're like a bull in a china shop. At their best, they can be tender, protective, caring, loyal people. They don't have any trouble expressing anger, which of course can cause a lot of suffering. The control can also cause suffering. They need to control. So there's the passion, the anger, that whole business of having to control, which you can, right, in this world. I mean, we just cannot control everything. Much as we would like to, we can't. So there would be the growth point for the type 8. Now, again, this is a growth point for all of us. We all want to control, but we do it in different ways. And ultimately, we're all going to have to learn, no matter what type we are, to get our hands off, because we know the one who is ultimately in control. So type 8. Type 9, very different. Type 9, because type 9 is the peacemaker, the mediator. And these mediators, they don't want any trouble. They want harmony inwardly. They want harmony on the outside. So they're not going to be as outspoken as the 8. Why? Because when you start to give a lot of opinions and you start to be very directive, people can get offended, and that can cause trouble. and conflict. And this is something that the mediator is going to avoid at point 9, is going to avoid this conflict. Why? Because it's uncomfortable, right? 9s are often, well, I've never met one who isn't pleasant and friendly and easygoing and patient and receptive. Helpful, kind people at their best. That's who they are. They're open-minded, and as I said, they're not quick to give opinions. It's not that they don't have opinions, but they're more likely to keep them to themselves. They're calm. They have a calm presence. The 8 doesn't have a calm presence. The 8's an intense presence. Calm. 9, yeah, a lot more laid back, gentle sort of presence. Easy to be with. Easy to be with. But often, because they don't give opinions out loud, they can become a bit self-forgetful. They can be so calm as they can sort of become not there, really, in a conversation or within a group. They can recede so much to the background that you forget they're there sometimes. And that's a problem. It's a problem for us, and it's also a problem for them if you're a type 9, because, you know, it's like you can withdraw to the point, you just don't want to be a burden, but you can withdraw to the point that you just blend in and you forget yourself. You know, you're not really being all that God created you to be. You're stepping back way too much and not stepping forward and not offering all your gifts to the rest of us. That can cause you a lot of suffering, can cause you a lot of anger. Not that you would say it, but inside, you know, you might just get very stubborn, or you might just withdraw. You might just close down. You might not necessarily feel anger. When it comes, oh boy, we'll all know about it because it won't happen much. But yeah, type 9, there would be the growth edge for that. But of course, all of us have these types within us. We all have a little bit of all the types within us. But when you study this in greater detail, you will find that you have a preferred way of looking at the world and your perspective. And this is all this is. These are 9 different perspectives. No one perspective is better than another. No one perspective is more accurate than another, which is why, once we get that in our heads, can really help us, not only with our relationships with other people, but also with how we view ourselves. And it makes a tremendous difference in the way that we develop our spiritual life with God. I mean, we start to really become a little bit more graceful when we realize that we haven't always got the right way of looking at things. So this has been a very, very brief introduction to the 9 types, the 9 points of the Enneagram.